Tens of thousands of employees either accepted or they wanted to accept the deferred resignation program by the Trump administration. These were federal employees that were eligible for retirement, and some of them were leaning towards accepting it. These are people that can just stop working. They have a strong 401k or TSP, and they have a pension and probably close to Social Security at this point. But what about the federal employee that needs to find a job or wants to find a job? Not everyone lives in an area where they can jump to, let's say, a state government job or a county government job, and that leaves pretty much the only option, which is the private sector. Would they have a hard time finding work? The Trump administration's stance on this is pretty clear. They want people to move out of the public sector and go into high productivity jobs within the private sector. They feel like that's the best way to increase the prosperity in this country. So let's take a look at the job market. We've seen a dip in total job openings since December. Now, the average time to hire right now is 2.5 months or 10.5 weeks. This is higher than usual, and it could mean a tougher transition for federal workers. But transitioning isn't the same across all federal roles. If you wanted to simplify it, there's two broad areas. There's people that have in-demand skills, and there's other people that are going to find more of a challenge to transition. So in-demand skills means more of cybersecurity, engineering, legal, medical. There's always going to be a demand for those type of individuals. Now with cybersecurity and IT, we're seeing AI encroaching on their territory, but there's always going to be a demand, right? Challenging, I would say, really number one is administrative skills, because right now there's 18 million jobs for people that have administrative skills. The problem with that is pretty much everyone has administrative skills. From the medical worker, from the engineer to the IT, everybody has administrative skills. So there's over 100 million people that could be actively looking for jobs that have this skill set, which means there's a low barrier to entry and there's way more competition that will be out there. So it can be discouraging for some people that are coming from admin in a federal government role and looking for the same type of position with similar pay. It's going to be very difficult. But let's look at two sectors that are hiring. Number one would be healthcare. Number two would be retail. The problem with healthcare really is you need certifications. You need a license in a lot of cases in order to practice healthcare. Now you could be a nurse after a year, after 2 years. You can move up, try to be an RN, try to be a physician assistant. It's a long path if you want to try to reach the top of that pyramid. And if you look at retail, well, nobody wants to work at retail. Retail is considered more of a transition job. They're going to work you. They're going to take advantage of all your energy, and you're not going to get much in return. You're not going to get like an equity package. You're not going to get stock benefits in a lot of cases. So most people are trying to avoid retail, or if they're doing retail, they only want to stay there temporarily. If you are transitioning, obviously the private sector is not like the public sector. In the public sector, it's more rigid. It's more structured. You have a hierarchy. In the private sector, they're moving faster. They're more agile. They're profit focused. If it doesn't make profit, they're not concerned with it. And as you're considering or trying to get into the private sector, the resume is completely different. They typically favor more of a one-pager or a two-pager. LinkedIn becomes more important. It becomes more important who knows you. The same can be said with certifications. Certifications, education, it can become more important. For people hoping to transition because they had a remote work job in the government, if you look on a website like Indeed, there's still over 2,000 open jobs for remote work. But how many of them are actually real? It could be difficult to find a similar position. And just like in the public sector where remote work is revered, everybody's trying to get there, it's super competitive. The same thing in the private sector. There's been multiple reports that if a job has remote work listed in it, it sees 2 to 3 times more applicants than if it doesn't have it in there. Now, another angle that federal workers could end up taking is looking at defense contracting. So there's contracting in government. Defense contracting is probably more secure and more insulated than the other type of contracting because defense contracting directly supports and helps Department of Defense. And what has been made clear with this latest hiring freeze is DOD, Department of Defense, is largely protected. So throughout this administration, I think it's likely that DOD will not see many cuts and they could in fact see increases. It's the same thing that we witnessed when Ronald Reagan was in office. He was downsizing government, but he was increasing the size of DOD. But it will come down to your skills. If you don't want to do defense contracting, let's say you have experience with logistics or supply management. You can find something at Home Depot or a company like that. If you have more IT skills, you can look at Amazon. Especially in the DC area, Amazon has their second headquarters stationed here. But what I would do first is I would look around your local area, smaller companies that are often neglected. And the reason for this is, number one, obviously there's less competition. If you don't even know the company's name, like it's not a mainstream word, it's a smaller company, less people are going to try to apply. That's going to help you out. Number two, if you're looking around your local area, there's going to be less of a commute. Number three is the actions that you take in that company, you're going to be able to see a result. So most people like a feedback loop to their work. You do work, you expend your effort, and then you would like to see what was the result of my effort. In the federal government, you're a very small cog in a humongous machine, and most people, they look at it as monotonous or they're not able to find it rewarding. In a smaller company, you could get that reward that could fuel you. You could like it. Now, the salary probably will be smaller than it would be at a larger company. But if you're looking for speed of getting in there, if you wanted a shorter time to hire, that would be my first place to look. The other option is to work for yourself. Now, this is going to be easier if you're retired military, if you have a pension, or if you have money coming in consistently, so you can kind of offset the risk. But most people find the absolute most enjoyment when they're actually working for themselves. So you would have to ask yourself, what problem can I fix out there? Because in order to get paid, in order to get money, you have to fix a problem. So find the problem. And how do you find out what problem you can solve is what have people been asking you about? Does anyone come up to you and say, hey, you're the best at planting tomatoes. Can you teach me how to plant tomatoes? You're the best at knitting. You're the best at whatever. So whenever that someone comes up to you, like, you know more about cars than anybody, can you tell me how to fix this? When you can identify a problem that you can solve, that can be monetized. That can create a business. And another way to look at it is what feels like play to you? What feels easy to you but hard to everyone else? If you're an amazing writer and you just love writing but everyone else hates writing, you could be a ghostwriter. You could do something in writing. At the end of the day, you want to try not to be discouraged or feel defeated or quit on yourself. You do not want to do that. Look at it as a challenge. And we should welcome challenges, generally speaking. If you think back in the past, anytime you have a really good memory, it's probably because you overcame a challenge. When you were extremely happy because you graduated college or you got your master's degree, or you're the first person in your family to actually get a bachelor's degree, do you remember how that felt? That felt amazing. That was a sense of euphoria, probably, because it was difficult. It took many years, and at the end of it, you received the incentive. You received the reward. And it's the same situation here. I remember times back when I was in Iraq. I spent a year in Iraq. And it was a time where we didn't have showers, we weren't doing laundry, I didn't really have internet access. And when I came back to the States, I had a sense of euphoria. I felt excited. I was happy to finally be back here. And it was my reward. Coming back to this country was my reward from spending 12 months in Iraq under hostile conditions. So look at it like that. Welcome the challenge. Know that it's going to make you better. It's going to improve you. And you're going to be looking back at this in 5 or 10 years. And this is probably going to be the best point of your life when you were able to overcome this specific challenge. So whatever stage of the job search that you're currently in, try to stay optimistic and keep doing the actions. That's the most important thing. The more actions that you do, the more you increase the probability of having good luck. Luck comes. Luck is a byproduct of doing a lot of actions, doing a lot of iterations. If you want to understand more about the federal government hiring freeze that we're all under right now, I answered a dozen questions about the hiring freeze and also the return to office mandate. If you're interested in that, I want you to check this video out next. If you need a federal resume, check out the links down below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.